Hi, I'm Andrea Klim, and you are watching Turn to the Stars. And today is November 12th, 2014. And the topics of today's show, very short overview in the beginning of the Turn to the Stars news, and then we're going to be talking about the new moon in Sagittarius, which is coming up on November 22nd, and then Saturn's influence as it moves through the constellation of Sagittarius. And so just a quick reminder of what we've got coming up on November 22nd, and this is brought to you by Turn to the Stars, and this is our 26th Psychic and Holistic Fair, which is going to be at the Yard Restaurant on Saturday, November 22nd from 10 a.m. to 4. And the theme of this fair is an exploration into the unknown. And we do have 11 insightful readings to offer, 4 healing therapists, and 5 holistic vendors. And as always, we are always working and on the path of raising the awareness to the quality of holistic healing within our community. And it's very exciting because we are going to be featuring a spirit's journey beyond the veil, which is an evidential mediumship gallery, and this is going to be from 1 to 3, which is during the process of the fair, and it is going to be with 2 very special ladies who have been with us and participating with the fairs for a very long time. They are the 2 most popular mediums that we have, and that is Sheila Clark and Danielle Dion. And you can enjoy an afternoon of messages from across the veil, and they are both spirit mediums, as I said before, and they're going to be connecting with the spirit world, bringing back validation and messages from loved ones who have crossed over. And so we hope that you will join us on Saturday, November 22nd, Saturday right before Thanksgiving. So we're very excited about this event. And next, as you've heard me talk about in the past, a new moon is a marker that a new cycle is about to begin. Hooray! And so on Saturday, also the 22nd, at exactly 5:57 a.m. here on the East Coast, we step forward to explore the new direction with all the changes that have occurred in each of our lives present since the eclipses that occurred in October. So kind of taking taking note of all the changes that you've just recently experienced, which many people have really felt the influences of these eclipses in some way. And it really has affected our outlooks, our perceptions, and our day-to-day lives. And so they've all changed in some way. And this new moon does bring in the theme that will have us questioning our beliefs and discerning what is true for ourselves. So what you see will depend on where you are. It's very interesting. Perception is a very interesting thing. If you stand, imagine that you're standing facing someone or something, and you turn completely around so that your back is to them, your perspective changes. If you turn all the way around, returning to the same place that you were, again, you will have a different perspective. So this new moon will inspire exactly this. It will inspire us to see things differently. And as humans, we do tend to see things through the lens of what we've been taught from our parents, from our lady friends or our men friends, through our teachers as we grew up, through our religious or belief upbringings, and through our various cultures. Then these belief systems are further reinforced by our friends, those that we work with, our communities, and even further by the country we live in. So due to the speed at which we live our lives, we often don't take the time to realize the path that we are on until we slow things down. We step off that road and we take a closer look. And it usually brings something, some type of experience in our life in order for that to happen, in order for us to say, wait a minute, I need to sit here for a moment. I need to contemplate this. So when you step off that road, things can look very minute and things can look very limiting. So for instance, if you go traveling abroad to another country, you gain a perspective from a different point of view, and there's a different understanding of life that is gained. So if you go for a walk through the woods, you would gain a different point of view and a different perspective. If you sit down to read a book, or you attend a educational seminar, or if you go out and you watch a movie that takes place in a different country, once again, you will gain a different point of view, and your eyes are going to be opened, and your perspective will change. So this new moon in Sagittarius will inspire things just as I've just mentioned. And, you know, Sagittarius is that zodiac sign that inspires discovery. It's very positive, very optimistic. There is this sense of truth that comes with it, and it inspires us to look further beyond the realm of what's in front of us. Look beyond the limiting walls of the norm, and we search further for the meaning of life and the role that we play in it. And it may inspire us to ask ourselves, why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So one of the interesting things is if you look at the symbol that represents Sagittarius, you will see that it is an archer. And you will see that that archer is aiming to shoot his arrow into the sky or into the heavens. And the constellation of Sagittarius is pointed right toward the center of the Milky Way, where the galactic core is at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And you've heard me talk about the supergalactic core before, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about the galactic core, because Sagittarius has, you know, at exactly 27 degrees is the core of the galactic center. And the heart of the Milky Way, or the center of the galactic source, is considered to be an emitter of wisdom and promotes a stream of galactic consciousness. It can deliver us the truth, this particular location. It can deliver dilemmas and the choices that involve the dichotomy of heaven and earth. So this new moon on November 22nd, which has Venus, the planet Venus, right beside it, will form a square to Neptune in Pisces. So I have a chart that I'm going to show you. And there it is. And this is the astrology universal chart that shows that new moon, which is highlighted in purple down on the bottom left. And you can see Venus is right in front of this, you know, just a little bit ahead of that new moon. It's also joined by Saturn in Scorpio. And it is also joined by Mercury in Scorpio, farly aspected, but it's all together. And, you know, this is really not a very easy chart that shows us the theme of this new moon. And you can see that by all those red lines that shoot out from the right, down to the bottom, to Neptune, and up to the left, up to the midheaven of the chart, and up to Jupiter. So that square that you're seeing represents all those squares, all those challenging aspects, represents challenges in the growing phase that we're in as humans, and it's asking us to expand our consciousness to one that is beyond the normal realms. It's actually, what it's doing is encouraging us to explore the realms of the unknown, the unseen, the imagination, the areas of our consciousness which are not easy to see. The square is also thinning the veil between the physical and the spiritual dimensions, and it's expanding our intuitions and imaginations. you know, it's interesting because I think that this new moon, by the square that it's forming to Neptune, is giving us a glimpse or an introduction of what the second part of today's show is going to begin to touch on, which is some of the challenges that we're faced in exploring the ways that we can overcome some of these very difficult struggles that we're facing with our immune systems, with some of these viruses, such as Ebola, as Neptune does rule the immune system. And it does, being in the constellation of Pisces, it does talk about the suffering that we are experiencing and the confusion of how to manage it. But it also brings to light compassion and creativity. It challenges us to expand our senses. So this aspect also to Neptune will further inspire us to look beyond the normal capacity of our minds so that we can understand the realities that only our heart and spirits can comprehend. Neptune's path, as you saw in that chart, through Pisces, will continue to remind us that the greatest illusion of all is the illusion that we're being separate from our divine source. Or, you know, when you feel like you're separate, or if you feel like you're far away, that is exactly the time when you're as close as you can be. But it can feel like an illusion. So there's a quote that, as I was in preparation for today's show, I heard this quote at the end of a TV show I was watching, and it does ring true for this new moon square to Neptune, and it's by a famous French poet, Jean de La Fontaine, and he said, "A person often meets his destiny on the road he took to avoid it, and oftentimes when things seem so challenging, seem so hard that there's nothing that we can do to change what's there, we have no choice to either face it or run from it." And so often, in that aspect that you see with Sagittarius squaring Neptune, does display exactly this quote: "A person often meets his destiny on the road he took to avoid it." And some of our challenge will be to slow down. Sagittarius is a fire sign. It does not like to go slow. It likes to keep on going, take flight. And so it will challenge us to spend some time contemplating the confusion that we are being faced with while continuing to stay on our individual roads facing the bumps as they arise, with an understanding and a belief that there's a greater plan unfolding. Very important to realize that there's a greater plan that's unfolding and that there is a reason for this experience, and it will only deepen our resolve. So the planet Neptune has been retrograde since June of this year, 2014, and it will hover around the same degrees until it wakes up from its long 5-month backward motion. It's retrograde motion, and it wakes up on November 16. And this signals that we're ready to move forward and we're ready to make peace with our past. And on October 8th, we had the second total lunar eclipse out of 4. They're calling them the blood moons. And that was a total lunar eclipse. And it brought us to take a look at the past, especially around the end of 1995. If you were to reflect back to that time, a lot of the experiences that you're having right now are very similar. However, of course, things have changed. You may be in a very different place, be in different relationships in your life, but there's this sort of weird, crazy type of stuff that's going on and relating to people around us. And that's because of that Uranus being involved in that lunar eclipse. But that lunar eclipse is influencing us to take a look at the past and to remember how our experiences affect us, and to now, this time, take a look at things in a different way, from a different perspective, especially in the realm of relationships and our relationship with ourselves. And so for many of us, Because of this, forgiveness of ourselves and of others may come to be the most important part, the most important thing for the past and for healthy resolve on this road that we're moving ahead in our lives. A great resource that I discovered in the past, which is very helpful in this area of forgiveness, is something called Radical Forgiveness, and it's a website by Colin Tipping. And you can get online and look up www.radicalforgiveness.com, and you can get that book on a DVD or on a book on tape, which is in the form of a DVD, or you can purchase the book. But I found it to be a very valuable resource, very different way of looking at forgiveness than the traditional forms that we're taught through church or through in our upbringing. So you might get important insights. Here's a very important thing to note, that you may receive some very important insights in your life between November 16th and November 23rd as that new moon begins to approach, which is going to square Neptune. So the 16th is when Neptune actually wakes up from being in that backward motion and things begin to move ahead. So beware of that time around the 16th. The symbol or picture that this new moon will present is one that cautions us to remember and to honor those old areas of difficulty, that is, old battles. By remembering them and honoring them as being part of our journey, we realize that we don't need to repeat them. We are experiencing something very similar, but we don't need to repeat the drama. We don't need to feed into it. We can take a different approach this time. So this new moon square to Neptune may bring to light a gathering of memories of old battles. It may reaffirm the value that came from the struggle, and also the achievements that you gain from having traveled that path. So that is all that the path that you traveled is all the things that you learned, all the wisdom that you gained, and all the values that you came to know. And also remember how valuable the knowledge is that you have from experience after those battles or those challenges. So this new moon will show us that every day is another chance to be creative. It's so important to realize what we hold on to in our minds. And the more present something is and the more unresolved something is, the more apt, the better it is to concentrate and find that resolve. So some insights, I want to move to talk about Saturn. And Saturn moving and shifting out of the constellation of Scorpio and into the constellation of Sagittarius, which is happening on Tuesday, December 23rd. And I'm probably going to continue with the second part of Saturn's path through Sagittarius next week, because there's a lot of information that I want to share with you that I think you would find very, very helpful, because Saturn is currently just past the middle of its journey through the constellation of Scorpio, and it changes signs about every 2 to 2.5 years, and as it transits through our personal charts, it generally represents the areas we will see challenges in, or where we need to slow down, contemplate, and do some work on accessing the structure and the wisdom that we are gaining from these experiences. So however challenging, it also represents some of our most concrete and realize goals as well. So Saturn's influence shows us structure. It teaches us, Saturn's the great teacher, teaches us how important it is to have boundaries in our lives. Saturn will move through the second half of Scorpio from November through December of this year, 2014, and on Tuesday, December 23rd, of 2014, it will enter Sagittarius at about 11:33 a.m. for the first time in 30 years. Saturn's full cycle, is about 29.5 to 30 years. And it last moved through this constellation of Sagittarius between 1985 and 1988. And it will remain in Sagittarius until June of 2015, when it will move back, when it begins, it'll begin its retrograde, and by June 16th of 2015, it'll go back into Scorpio for a final 3 months, a final 3-month visit, as it takes us backward in time through its retrograde, and one more time we will revisit areas which need further reflection through that constellation of Scorpio. That's our shadow side. That's other people's money, other people's values, the emotion, and the things that we don't want to look at. So it's important to know those dates. It does re-enter Sagittarius again on September 18th of 2015 until December 20th of 2017. So as Sagittarius, as you heard me talk about before, is the zodiac sign that is the on the natural zodiac, that rules the 9th house of the natural zodiac. And that area of the chart has to do with higher education, philosophy, our belief systems, the truth. What is our truth? It rules over foreign affairs and world views. It rules over research and development and looking beyond the norm. It rules over fairness. So we'll see that there are some world views that we see many different viewpoints come to light, and that there may be some great changes. Saturn is the great restructurer. And Saturn's movement through Sagittarius will generate a period of the Saturn in Sagittarius that you see on the screen. It's showing us that particular time, which is when Saturn moves into Sagittarius, which is December 23rd of 2014. So it's highlighted up there on the right part of the chart, and I've been describing a lot of what you're seeing in that chart, and Saturn's movement through Sagittarius will generate a period of contemplation for us, all of us, on an individual level and also on a collective area level. And the planet that holds rulership over Sagittarius is Jupiter. And Jupiter, every planet, every zodiac sign has a planet that rules it. And Jupiter inspires concerns over our money, our standards, and our ideals, our belief systems, our educational pursuits, the medical field, religions, churches, governments, and laws. And it indicates that ideas will change and evolve in our lives during this cycle of Saturn, and on the collective scale or in the world. We see changes. We're going to see changes in the higher education system, in the churches, in the political arenas, and issues over laws and over boundaries. We're going to see conflict between extremists on religious viewpoints. As Saturn moves into Sagittarius, it will begin its square to Neptune at 5 degrees of Pisces. So in about February of 2015, Saturn will move to 4 degrees by the second week of February. And it's going to come within a close orb with Neptune, representing the very first part of that strength of that square. And Neptune is the planet of dreams, illusions, delusions, disillusionment, and it also represents suffering. It represents resolve. It represents the depth of our consciousness or the vastness of our consciousness. And so it's going to be between 4 and 7 degrees of Pisces that we see this square occurring between Saturn and Neptune. So probably going to have to, stop pretty soon here because we're almost to the end of the show. There's just so much information about Saturn's path through Sagittarius that I'd like to share. I'd say about late November of 2015, Saturn will be in an exact square to Neptune and Pisces at 7 degrees, and the circumstances in the world and in our lives will start to change once again. So while Saturn, our structure, rules over our structure, our responsibilities, Neptune's transit tends to dissolve situations over time. So one last thought about this before I end the show, and remind you that I will continue with this next week on Turn to the Stars. The structures, the situations, and even relationships may begin to evolve and dissolve into new situations in some cases if this is aspecting your chart. So it's going to bring to realization some real important realities that we need to see. So next week I'm going to talk further on Saturn's path through Sagittarius. Want to remind you one more time about November 22nd, the fair, and we can't wait to see you there. It's always such a great day, an exploration into the unknown. So, and that's on November 22nd. So until next week, take good care, and remember, turn to the stars. You'll find your answers there.